Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. 5 most important breakout players for this Georgia program heading into 2024. And these are some of my favorite conversations to have in terms of we've talked extensively about this Georgia program. Many of you guys who've been listening to the boys the last couple of weeks and months know that I think this Georgia team is the best team in the country heading into the fall. And a lot of the conversation kind of surrounds quarterback Carson Beck or Mikael Williams or Malachi Starks. A lot of the stars on this Georgia program that are coming back in 2024. I think the most interesting conversation to have around this Georgia program is who are the players that need to break out in 2024 for Georgia to kind of reach their potential during the 2024 season, which you make no mistake about it, is winning a national championship. Fired up to get into this conversation. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Georgia fans. Two things. One, the amount of support y'all have shown the fellas over the last couple of weeks and months. It truly does mean a lot, whether we're talking about this team heading into 2024, talking about what they're doing on the recruiting trail. Can't thank you guys enough for the support. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, for the Georgia fans, I would love to hear some feedback from you guys. We all get our opportunity to kind of call our shot heading into 2024. Who's going to be breaking out for this Georgia program? I think more importantly, why are they important to break out for this Georgia program? And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with a kid that I loved coming out of high school in that 2023 cycle, Jonel Aguero, and why I think Jonel Aguero is just not only a massive candidate to break out, but is vital for this Georgia program to be a very good football player. That is, you look at the star position, not only across college football, is that becoming a position that is massively important to all defenses. But I think specifically for this Georgia defense, it's one of the most important positions that you see on the football field. I mean, you look at all the different responsibilities that are put on that star player for this Georgia program. You have to be physical in the box, supporting the run game. You have to deal with a wide variety of pass catchers in coverage, whether it's jumbo tight ends that are split out wide, whether it's the shiftier kind of slot wide receivers. There's so much responsibility that is put on that star position. You go back to 2023, Tyke Smith played that spot exceptionally well for this Georgia program. Can Jonel Aguero, a guy that I think is born to play that star position, come in 2024 and kind of hit the ground running and be that, reliable star that Georgia needs every single year? And I look at Jonel Aguero, and ever since he committed to Georgia out of high school, we talked about this kid when he committed. He was just born to play that star position. You look at the physical frame at 5'11", 205 pounds, can play downhill, can give you that run support, but also a phenomenal athlete that can match up with a variety of pass catchers in that nickel role as well. You look at Jonel Aguero, one really important position to this Georgia defense, but I think more importantly, this kid was just born to play that star spot, got his feet wet a little as a freshman in 2023. I expect a massive step in the right direction in 2024. And talk about a guy that he's not going to be included in any preseason all-conference honors. I think we could look at this kid come the end of November and talk about one of the better players on this Georgia defense in the 2024 year. Jonel Aguero, probably my number one breakout candidate. Number two, and the Georgia fans that, at this point, 6 months now have been rocking with us. We've been talking a lot about Jalen Walker going into year 3. I think Georgia, to start, has just a better idea of how to use a guy like Jalen Walker. And he's kind of bounced around, playing that off-ball linebacker spot, blitzing off the edge. I look at Jalen Walker and say he might be the best pure pass rusher on this Georgia program. And that's saying a lot because you look at the pass rushers that Georgia has. It is an absolutely loaded group, but you saw a small sample size in 2023, but it was an elite sample size from Jalen Walker. You take a look at the numbers, had a 21.5% pass rush win rate, only rushed the quarterback 125 times, but had 19 quarterback hurries. That led this Georgia Bulldogs program. Now you look at Jalen Walker and say, why is he so important for Georgia to break out? There were not many things that Georgia struggled in 2023. In fact, they were top 10 in almost every single important statistical category that you could find. That being said, one category that we're not really used to seeing Georgia be outside the top 40 in is sack rate. And you look at Georgia sacked the quarterback only 6.6% of the time. That was 57th in the country. And I think a large part of it was, I don't know if they had that elite edge rusher that could pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. And you look at a guy, Mikael Williams, one of the best players in all of college football, very good in the run game, can collapse pockets, but I don't know if he's necessarily that elite top-end pass rusher. I guess you could say, yeah, he's only going into year 3 as well. I look at Jalen Walker and say, this kid could be that guy for Georgia. We know they're going to be extremely stingy against the run. They're going to set teams up in those third and long situations. I think the question is, who's going to emerge as that guy that it's 3rd and 7, we're getting after the passer, who is pinning the ears back and making it happen? I think it can be a guy like Jalen Walker. Now, does Jalen Walker need to be a quote-unquote starter for this Georgia program? Not necessarily. If he just comes in on 2nd and 3rd downs and kind of gets after the passer, that is completely fine for Georgia. But I think at the end of the day, you're looking at that number and say 57th in the country in sack rate. There's a lot of programs across the country that certainly would take that. Kirby Smart, you know that's unacceptable. They're going to be finding ways to get after the passer at a higher level. I think Jalen Walker could be that guy. I would also throw in Damon Wilson. You talk about two guys that just have a different level of juice in terms of attacking tackles on that outside shoulder. I think Jalen Walker, Damon Wilson could be those guys for this Georgia program. I would also throw in guys like Jordan Hall or Jamal Garrett on the inside of the Georgia defensive line as really important breakout players as well. Want to move to the offensive side of the football. And I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit and do a 2-for-1. We obviously know that we have to replace Brock Bowers. I think there's going to be a lot of casual college football fans that look at Georgia trying to replace someone like Brock Bowers and say they're not going to be able to do it. And I'm not saying Oscar Delp or Benjamin Urasek are going to be Brock Bowers. We haven't seen a kid like Brock Bowers in a very long time at the collegiate level, arguably ever. That being said, I think Georgia fans who know this program very well are saying, hey, we're going to be just fine at the tight end position. And even though you lose Brock Bowers, this still might be one of, if not the best tight end room that you see in the country. I look at Oscar Delp and say he's one of those candidates that really could emerge as being one of the best tight ends, not only in the SEC, but in the country. I think he's a hammer in the run blocking department, which I think is really important for Georgia. You know, they like to run with 2 tight ends. They like to run the football a lot, especially with the offensive line that they're going to have. Oscar Delp can get it done in the run blocking department, but also can be that matchup nightmare where he is extremely fluid, a natural pass catcher. And then I want to talk about Benjamin Urasek, who I think just kind of flying under the radar. He had a phenomenal year in 2021, and then the last couple of years with that Stanford offense, it's just been a disaster. I look at Benjamin Urasek and say, this kid could just absolutely break out for this Georgia program. And you look at, they're going to use a lot of 2 tight ends, Oscar Delp, Benjamin Urasek. I think you're looking at one of the better tight end duos that you see in the country, which is absolutely insane because you're replacing one of, if not the best tight end we've ever seen at the collegiate level. I think the tight ends breaking out for Georgia, it's extremely important because you know that is a position that they rely heavily on in that passing attack. Number 4 on the list, and I'm going to go to a wide receiver that I'm probably nitpicking a little bit. Dominic Lovett was pretty damn good for Georgia in 2023. I think he can be even better in 2024. You look at Dominic Lovett and the opportunity that he's going to have. This is the ideal wide receiver for a guy like Carson Beck, attacking the middle of the field, those short intermediate route trees, getting the football and on time accurately. You look at Dominic Lovett and say, one of the best pure route runners that you see in the country, can create separation just so easily in his route trees, but I think more importantly, can be an absolute weapon out of the catch, or after the catch, I should say. And you look at Dominic Lovett last year, over 600 receiving yards. It was a damn solid year for Dominic Lovett, but I don't think he had all of the opportunity that I think he wanted to have in 2023, because you look at Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, very similar route concepts that they excel with, that Dominic Lovett excels with as well. And so now with Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey moving on to the NFL, I think you're looking at Dominic Lovett and say he's probably the wide receiver 1 in this Georgia offense. Now, you could look at this wide receiver room and say, all right, Colby Young's just an absolute freak show. One of the first, a true X wide receiver that Georgia kind of missed out on last year. I would certainly not argue if you wanted to put Colby Young in that situation. London Humphreys coming from Vanderbilt, a guy that can just absolutely burn, attack teams in that deeper third. They got a couple wide receivers that certainly can break out in 2024. I'm going with Dominic Lovett because, one, I think he fits what Carson Beck's looking for, but I think more importantly, I think Dominic Lovett's just a really, really good wide receiver heading into the 2024 year. Last player I want to talk about, and again, this is not necessarily a breakout player because he's been one of the best running backs in the country the last 2 years. Trevor Etienne coming to this Georgia offense is just going to be a difference maker. And why I'm saying he's a breakout candidate is he hasn't gone for over 1,000 yards during his time at Florida. One, not a ton of opportunity because Billy Napier doesn't necessarily like to use a bell cow running back. I think Trevor Etienne's going to be a bell cow running back for this Georgia program. But I think more importantly, you look at that Florida offensive line, it was a disaster last year. It was one of the bottom units in the SEC. Trevor Etienne still averaged 5.8 yards per carry, 4 yards after contact. This is a running back that can create so much at the second level, just didn't get a ton of opportunity to get to the second level because Florida struggled to establish that run. You look at Trevor Etienne coming behind a Georgia offensive line that I think is going to be one of the best units in the country. I think you're looking at a running back that if he stays healthy for all 12-plus games, he's going to go over 1,200 rushing yards. And I think that you look at Trevor Etienne and say, we've seen him play some really good football in this Georgia offense, behind this Georgia offensive line. You might look at one of the leading rushers across the country for this Georgia offense and Trevor Etienne. And it's a sneaky, loaded running back room for Georgia. And I don't think a lot of people see it that way, but I think they're going to see it come the fall in 2024. But Trevor Etienne, in my opinion, going to be the kind of workhorse back for this Georgia program. That'll do it for the boys. Those are my 5 most important breakout players for Georgia. There are a lot of different candidates. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.